In this video and the next one, I want to talk about validation. Okay, and these are basically there are two types of validation that are very popular in design strategy. One of them is pre-design validation, and the next one will be pre-implementation validation. But we have much more techniques and places that we need to validate our designer ideas, everything. Okay, there are tons of research techniques that we could apply in this validation, in the validation process. We have pre-design validation, post-design validation, pre-implementation validation. There are some validation and research techniques that are being used like in the middle of this process of designing. So we need to learn these terms. We need to learn the techniques. We need to understand where to apply which research technique in order to get the best result. So we need to understand and learn the terminology like formative techniques, summative techniques, A/B testing, exploratory problem discovery technique. So there are tons of terms and the techniques involved. So we're going to learn them step by step. The first thing that I want to talk about is this basically pre-design validation in this process of design strategy. So to begin with, let's understand why we need validation. Okay, I need to explain the reason. I need to talk about this graph that you see here on this in this diagram. It doesn't matter if we write down a vision statement or we just develop some idea in our mind. Anyway, we need to either consciously or unconsciously, we think about three different things: the user of the product, the problem that they are facing, and our solution that solves the problem perfectly. Okay, that's our assumption. So maybe the first thing that we see and we imagine is this our solution. What's the product? What's our idea? What's the value that we are offering? Like from top-down view, that's the main thing that we see, and it usually covers the other things, the other two elements, or all two other assumptions that are hidden like behind it. One of them is the user group, that we always consider that there is a user group and there are some people who need this product, this solution. And we also imagine or make some assumptions about that their problems, the problems that they are facing, and some of those problems are much more important than others. One of them is the main problem that they are facing, and our solution is usually, based on our assumption, is the best solution that solves the problem. So either consciously or unconsciously, we are assuming something, three things basically here. So my suggestion is to write down some statement that describe those assumptions. One, who's the user of our product? Two, what's the main problem that they are facing? Three, what's the solution that we think is the best answer that address that problem? So these are the three assumptions that we need to validate before moving forward, spending more time on our ideation, on our design process. Okay. So this is the main concept about application of this validation. We need validation because we always start a project, a design strategy project, based on some assumptions, some input, some at least assumptions about these three things. Okay, and overestimating a product value, the solution that we are offering is valuable to the user because it solves a problem. So all these three elements are involved. But overestimating this value equals to fail. Like the product wouldn't be successful if we are overestimating this value. Okay. And the other thing is that entrepreneurs are dreamers. Like when we have an idea, we are kind of attached to that idea, that we think that this is the best idea in the world. And I mean, it's based on assumption anyway. And that's why we need to validate it, because we want to wake up if it's a nightmare, because it could be a nightmare. Because it doesn't matter how many people around us tell us that, okay, this is a good idea. Maybe they don't dare to tell us the truth. Okay, so that's the reason we need to conduct a research, unbiased research to validate or invalidate the assumptions that we formed. So, yeah, I believe I talked about validation is the process of confirming that a specific customer segment finds value in your solution. Okay, so here, how they find value, because it solves the problem. Okay, their problem, basically, that specific customer segment's problem. And it helps your team, if you're working in a team, which you usually do, it helps your team to determine if the vision of your product is a dream or a potential nightmare. Okay, so that's the main purpose of this validation. So here we are talking about a kind of research, like validation is kind of research. And usually in the beginning, it's more kind of user research technique. So Lean Startup has been created based on these ideas. It's actually introduced this idea and emphasize on this idea that user validation should happen right in this fuzzy front end of the product development, when we don't know, when we are dealing with all those assumptions. Like some of them are more detailed design assumptions, some of them are more like higher level assumptions, as I just talked about. But all of them are assumptions. Like there's no solid ground right in the beginning. That's the reason Lean Startup tells us that to begin with a project, do research. Validated user research would help you to make to validate your assumptions, basically. Okay, it's a make or break aspect of moving forward on a product strategy. So how to do that? It's easy. Like it's one day work, which could save us tons of hours, money, resources, and everything. Okay. First of all, we need to reach out to the target users. I'm going to talk about how to narrow down and specify the characteristics of the users later. But the important thing is that to find a way to reach out to target users. It could be through social media. It could be like going to a location that we find our users there. So there are different techniques. But when you find the users, like usually 7 to 10 users, you need to do kind of interview. And here I mentioned interview. It could be survey as well, but interview works much better because you have this opportunity to explore all those things that come up in this conversation with your potential user. And then the last step would be to synthesize the finding and put it into form it into a kind of user models. And we're going to talk about the user models as well. That it's a way to synthesize the user insight, basically, the result of your interview. Okay, and what I would say that interview, like if you find if you go to a location that you could find your potential user, interview part wouldn't take more than half a day, and then synthesizing the findings and forming some user models, that also wouldn't take more than a day, more than half a day. So if we could validate our assumptions in one day before investing more money, time, resources in this direction, this idea, so why not? Okay, that's why we need to incorporate some kind of validation, and that's why this is a crucial part to our design strategy, basically.